What is up, my podcast listeners? This is your host, Rethink Matuszewski, and we are going to get right into it. My apologies for not getting this out sooner, but life's been crazy, and I've been training a lot, teaching a lot, and also trying to put together some Black Friday deals for you guys. So if you haven't seen anything yet, my online Kinstretch platform is going to be 76% off, and you're only going to pay $7 for it. All of my ebooks are going to be anywhere from 80 to 83% off. All of my t-shirts, hats, and sweaters are going to be I think about 20% off. So if you want to support this channel, support my podcast, support what I do, then that's going to be the easiest thing for you guys to do. And I'll put all the links in the show notes and description in this episode. So what I want to talk about today, really simply, is biomechanics. And I recently taught this course for my 200-hour yoga course that I'm teaching with a good friend of mine. And what I kind of realized is most people have no idea what biomechanics is and then how it relates to exercise. And I remember when I was first in this industry and I knew biomechanics was this like science and it was kind of important to know, but when I started reading about it, it was super boring and I didn't really see the whole point. And that's my my issue of being naive about it, but I think it's more so I've never had an experience in my career where I had someone teach it to me in a way that I could relate, visualize it, and go, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. And I'm not going to explain the whole science of biomechanics, but instead mention a few things that were picked up on my course with my students. And a lot of it that I went through was teaching them that there are anatomical differences in every human. And if we place someone in a yoga class or place them in a gym setting and give them a yoga pose or an exercise that have exact parameters of how it's supposed to look and how it's supposed to move, then we're kind of in this tough spot where most people don't have the requirements to do said exercise or yoga pose. And what ends up happening is the forces that go through your tissues will not be the same as someone who might move very, very well. So an example of that is, say the average Joe, that most people who listen to my podcast and watch my stuff are, and that average Joe or Jane who sits at a desk for 8 to 10 hours or whatever it is, will most likely have some sort of limitation in their hip mobility. And say we give them a squat. How is that squat going to feel on that individual who may not have enough hip external or internal rotation that allows them to get deep enough into the squat, so then the force that goes through their entire body will get distributed evenly enough so then you can get a training effect. So I've seen so many times in my career where someone goes into a gym and they're following this kind of class format, and the lead instructor goes, all right, we got back squats today, and sets up all the barbells on the squat racks. And then you see this person who like tries to like look around like, oh, okay, let's put this thing on. And they're kind of like this, and they kind of do these quarter squats. And they're like, this doesn't feel right, but everyone else is doing it, so I guess that's normal. And you just keep doing that, and eventually something hurts, something gets pulled, or your entire back goes out. And you're like, oh my God, why is this happening to me? Why is my back hurting? I've been exercising. Isn't exercise supposed to make me feel better? But for some reason I feel worse. Now I have to take time off, and story goes on. But if that trainer, coach, whoever actually understood biomechanics and saw that someone was struggling in the back squat that clearly has no business being there, could have been like, hey, why don't we do this and this and this instead to make your back squat look better? And then say they run through those things and it gets a little bit better, but it's still not quite there. Maybe try a variation. My biggest issue with training in general is that we have all these man-made exercises that have parameters that you have to fit in, and if you don't fit in them, people just force you to do them. Like, it's kind of crazy. Like, you're literally trying to put a square peg in a round hole in hopes that is just going to work out magically. Our bodies are not built like that. You know, something as simple as like ankle mobility, kind of important when it comes to squatting. And a simple fix or change is just elevate the heels. Usually that fixes a lot of shit. And then people are like, oh my God, I can like squat 20 degrees deeper than I did before, and I actually feel my entire legs working and not just my quads and the front part of my knee that tends to get flared up. Or you just take it one step further and go, you know what, maybe we scrap the back squat in general and squats in general, and we focus on single leg things and also focus on mobility, because clearly you don't have it. And I think the fitness industry is starting to get a little bit better in this, but in yoga, I've been teaching this 200-hour course. This is my second go around, about to go to the third. And the people coming in who have done yoga classes, who are already instructors looking to get some continuing ed, it's the same thing, but there's no like direction of how to change things. Something as simple as a downward dog, for example. Like, there's a lot that has to go right in order for that to look decent. Like, if someone doesn't have ankle mobility, your whole downward dog's already off. If you don't have enough hip mobility that allows your hamstrings to go straight in that V position, you're already at a loss. If you can't get your bicep beside your ear in that downward dog shape, you're already at a loss. So then we have these weird banana-like downward dogs where gravitational forces are going down through your body not as equal as someone who has the prerequisites to make a downward dog look decent or textbook worthy. So there's a lot to unpack here, because I find that most yoga instructors, most trainers probably don't take the time to realize these things, and they tend to put together classes and workouts that are biased on their own opinion of like what's good. But what if we started creating classes and sequences and training sessions that were really specific to your group or really specific to your client in front of you? Wouldn't that make more sense? Like, if barbell deadlifting is not looking right with your client, why are you forcing them to do it? You obviously have some sort of like attachment to that exercise. And don't get me wrong, I fucking love deadlifts. I have all my clients deadlifting, but it might not just be the barbell. It might be something else. It might be a single leg version. It might be a B stance version. Maybe it's a dowel band resisted deadlift for them to learn how to hinge and feel their hamstrings. Like, there's so many different things that you can do. And in my course that I was teaching, at the end of it, all the hands-on stuff was like, here's all the foundational movement patterns. And let's look at the hinge, the deadlift. Here's like 80 different ways to do it. Find what works the best for your client and go with it. I think a lot of times people get lost in traditions, get lost, and it becomes just a habit, you know? And people never have those moments where they ask themselves, like, why am I doing this? And I think it's a good time to reflect too, because we're nearing the end of the year, right? Like today is November 23rd, and we pretty much just have a month left of this year. And anytime I mentor a trainer, I always tell them at the end of every year, do an audit of everything you learned, everything that you believe in training, and see if you can challenge it. See if you can find holes and then ask the question, why? Why am I doing this? Why did this person that I learned from get to this conclusion? And see if you can break it apart. If you can't, then it's probably a pretty good method. But I always go through this. And actually, I brought this up in my low back pain course that I teach in the 200-hour yoga teacher training certification. A huge component of that 5-hour course is me talking about Dr. Stuart McGill. And if you don't know who he is, you should definitely look him up, because he's probably done at least 35 years worth of spine research. So he knows a thing or two about spines and how they work and the biomechanics of it and what we should and shouldn't do. And for a long time, I was following him blindly of his methods of spine training and keeping a healthy spine and things like that. And then I started taking other courses, listening to other people, and if you know Dr. Stuart McGill, he's very much on the side of like creating a stable spine, making it stiff, creating stiffness, which is great in certain situations. But at the same time, when you look at the design of our spine, right, we have 33 vertebrae. And I started thinking, well, if we have 33 vertebrae, really, it's 33 separate joints. And if you think of our shoulder, that's allowed to move in all these different ranges, it would make sense for me to continue moving my shoulder in all those ranges and not just making it stiff all the time. So with a spine, I was like, well, wouldn't it make sense to like learn how to stabilize and create stiffness, but also be able to move through the spine? Because I also look at stability as being able to move in controlled ways in different positions. But I'm not going to like deadlift 400 pounds with a rounded back, but I should be able to learn how to segment my spine. And segmentation isn't really something that Dr. McGill speaks that much about. So I was like, okay, well, maybe we're missing something. And then I started experimenting with myself and my clients. Like, what if I teach them how to stabilize and be stiff and also mobile? And then I came to the conclusion that they go hand in hand, right? If I know how to be stiff in certain situations, hey, can you help me move today? Okay, sweet. Let's pick up this gigantic couch. I'm going to deadlift it up and create stiffness and be super stable. And then, you know, go into situations where I want to go pick up my daughter, but she's in this weird thing and I'm grabbing my dog out of the way and I have to rotate and then pick her up. I want to be able to do that with my spine and not have my back go out, you know? So this is the thing, is you need to start asking yourself, why am I doing the things that I'm doing? So if you're just a fitness goer listening to my podcast or watching it, and you've been doing the same workout for like years or the same routine, because people fall into that. Like people will go to a big box gym, they hop on the treadmill, they hop on the elliptical for 15 minutes, and then they go to machine A, machine B, and so forth. And then they clock in their hour workout and that's it. 3 days a week, and then years go by and they're like, I haven't lost a pound. I haven't gotten any stronger. Maybe you need to audit what you're doing and see if there's gaps. Most of the time there are gaps. I'm not saying that what you're doing is worthless, because you're still going to get the health benefits, but your body adapts to that stress. That's the hard thing about this whole exercise thing, is that our bodies are really, really smart. They do not want to lose fat. They do not want to lose weight because they think we're dying. So you need to kind of be creative and be mindful of what you're actually doing. People just fall into the same thing, right? They'll start thinking about like, okay, when was I at my best? It's like, oh, back when I was like in my early 20s, I used to run all the time. And then you're gonna go run. But training in your 40s compared to your 20s, two separate things. Like in your 40s, stuff does not bounce back as fast as in your 20s. In your 40s, your stress level's up here, and your 20s is like down here. So that plays a huge role. In your 40s, you've picked up some bad habits, some bad eating habits, some bad sleep hygiene habits. Like there's a lot more to it. Hormonally, medical history, previous injuries. So add all that together, and then you're going to go run outside. Probably not going to be the best thing for you. So to kind of circle back to this whole concept of biomechanics, what you need to understand is that not every exercise is going to fit the mold of who you are. And instead, you should be finding things that you're able to move quite freely in and stick to those things. Learn how to progress them, learn how to regress them, and find exercise protocols that fits your anatomy and not the person beside you. If you want to learn more about biomechanics or anything really, just look through all my social media. If you really want to take it to the next level, you could take my biomechanics course, which will half of it be online in 2025. But another good one too is the functional anatomy one, that we go through all this kind of stuff, and you'll learn a lot. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Add me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Threads. What else am I on? YouTube, obviously, and SoundCloud, Spotify, and all that fun stuff to listen to this podcast. Thank you so much for listening and just having me ramble this whole time. Till next time, you guys.